Hello, and welcome to my presentation for the cheetah exhibit design proposal at the Denver Zoo. So starting right off the bat, we're going to talk about the constraints and considerations that went into the designing of the cheetah exhibit. So we have some of the regulatory side and the legislative side as well, and we're going to hop into that. So our first regulatory body is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, which is the gold standard for exhibit design and just for zoos in general. This organization is an accrediting organization, and they primarily regulate animal welfare needs, but in this case it's going to be the exhibit size, the furnishings, barriers, and then the overall welfare that the exhibit needs to meet those levels to care for. And so that you can see there on the presentation that welfare is going to include a variety of things. And for the case of cheetahs, that could be anywhere between temperature regulation or enrichment opportunities, or even just encouraging natural behaviors. So for the designing of the exhibit here, we really took into consideration the AZA standards, as the Denver Zoo is accredited and wants to maintain that accreditation. So we really looked at the types of furnishings that need to go in there, such as all of the vegetation and trees, and even the platforms. The platforms are definitely a big thing for cheetahs there, whether that be rock platforms or wooden platforms. They just need that there to observe their surroundings and feel that natural behavior. The barriers are also something that we want to comply with. We have multiple barriers in this exhibit design. You have the rock wall in the back, you have the fencing, the crosshatch fencing, you also have that moat as well, and those are just barriers to maintain safety protocols for the animal and the people as well. The second regulatory body is going to be the USDA, or the United States Department of Agriculture. This is another organization that kind of enforces federal laws such as the Animal Welfare Act and the Endangered Species Act. It also maintains standards for animal welfare and exhibit design as well, but the AZA is going to take those standards and go above and beyond them, but they both do regulate that to some degree. And then USDA is also going to focus on some safety regulations for visitors and employees. So we want to keep that in mind when we're designing this habitat, to make sure that although we're designing something to be pretty natural for animals, we need it to be human safe as well, as those keepers need to go in there and make sure that things are safe, things are clean, and that the animal is well taken care of. And at the local level, we have the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. This is the state and local division of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Commission. So this is Colorado's specific one. It's local to the area, and it maintains standards for animal welfare and conservation. And the conservation is really going to come into play. This organization in particular is going to be really interested at looking at breeding programs. If the Denver Zoo decides to engage in a species survival plan or a captive breeding program, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Commission, or even the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Division, is going to be very interested in seeing how these conservation efforts are maintained and how the animal is being treated in the process of doing so. So moving on to the legislation side of things, we have a couple of acts here that we really wanted to comply with when designing the cheetah exhibit, and one of those is the Animal Welfare Act. This is a really big one for us. This essentially just makes certain that the animal is receiving the highest quality of care in order to provide it with a happy, healthy life, and also ensure that its needs are being met. So we really want to make sure that we're complying with that, as well as the Endangered Species Act, which the cheetah is a part of. The cheetah is considered vulnerable, but it is at a decreasing trend, and so we want to really do our part and make sure that the cheetah does not go into a further decline, such as being threatened or endangered, which would lead to extinction. So we really want to ensure that that animal there is then being treated to the best of our ability, and then also focus on some conservation efforts that are really going to come into play with that act. And then you also have the more human side of things with the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA, and that's really just going to be there in order to prevent discrimination against Americans with disabilities. So the designing of that enclosure, we really want to keep it up to par with that act in order to maintain equality with our current and future employees, ensuring that they are able to work in that habitat or work around that animal and have the same opportunity as able-bodied people. And then the Occupational Safety and Health Administration Standard, or OSHA. This is another big one. This is going to be our heavy hitter for employee rights, as well as the ADA there. And so the OSHA standards are really going to set a lot of regulations to ensure that our employees are taken care of while in that exhibit and even outside of that exhibit. So we're going to have a lot of health and safety regulations going on just to make sure that the animal is safe and we are safe. So moving on to the Denver Zoo's master plan. So the master plan focuses primarily on welfare, conservation, and education values. And so we really wanted that naturalistic, immersive, and functional exhibit design in order to meet the needs of the cheetah. Meeting the needs of the cheetah is going to encourage a lot of natural behaviors, whether that be through enrichment opportunities or furnishings or platforms. And we're hoping that with all of these factors set in place and meeting the needs of the cheetah, we're hoping to eventually encourage some breeding behaviors so that we can eventually establish an SSP, or a species survival program, which is a captive breeding program that we're hoping to endeavor upon in order to recover the declining cheetah population. So having that exhibit design be immaculate for the cheetah is really going to be helpful for that, which is going to go back hand in hand with conservation and even education efforts, as you're able to educate visitors based on that attempt to conserve and preserve that species. Now, educational opportunities in and of themselves, we really want to hit hard on that as well, and that's really going to depend on the success of the exhibit. And in doing so, we're going to be able to benefit the animal and visitors, and then in the long run, conservation efforts as well, as we're educating visitors based on the exhibit design of the animal. And lastly, the institutional collection plan. So for the Denver Zoo, we really want to make that justification for obtaining and maintaining the cheetah within the exhibit. So with this, we have a couple of ideas here. So the species survival plan or the captive breeding program will be there in order to recover the vulnerable species from extinction. And this is a major justification for having a cheetah on exhibit in Denver. Doing so is really going to be able to make a stepping stone or a milestone in conservation efforts. And so just that alone is really going to justify having cheetahs on exhibit for an ICP, but also providing educational opportunities to visitors regarding biodiversity, ecosystem collapse, food webs, conservation efforts, and even hitting hard on the importance of AZA zoos in terms of conservation efforts and even just animal welfare as a general thing. And here are my sources. Thank you for listening.